All right, we're
I'm good,
live. Keaton
man.
Hoskins, how you doing today? Good. Appreciate you coming on. When people ask me, who's my inspiration, it's guys like you. It's fathers, it's entrepreneurs, it's the guys that are doing work to help others, right? It's not the all the flashiness on social media and stuff. It's really not that. It's when I look ahead, it's like what do I want to be. I was saying pre-calling, I'm a father, but one of my next life goals is to be a husband as well. So I appreciate guys like you
Absolutely,
coming
man.
on and
Honored to
sharing your
be here.
message. Thank you. So what got you? Why do you do what you do? What got you into all this?
That's a loaded question, but it's a good question. I've spent the majority of my
Yeah.
life being an entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur. I've built a lot of companies. I've bought a lot of companies, started a lot of companies, just done a lot of cool stuff. And about 2 years ago, as I was contemplating my next move, what I was going to do, I owned a few companies. I spent some time in actual prayer and kind of meditation, thinking about what would be more purposeful, right? There becomes a time in everybody's life where you make enough money and the rat race is different and life is different. You know, that succession of man where you first kind of fulfill your wants, or I should say your needs, and then you fulfill your wants. And then that third succession of man is you fulfill the needs of other people. And I was kind of at that place in my life a few years ago. And in that meditation, in that prayer, it became very prevalent to me that I wanted to help other people. And so, in that, I kind of dedicated myself to a lot of personal development, which I'm adamant about. And in that personal development, I realized that the closer that I got to God, the more I realized who I was. And the more I realized who I was, the more clear it became what I wanted to do. And that was to help other people. So I launched a program that I get to mentor and help people become the greatest version of themselves. And as I got closer in that relationship with God, I realized what that ultimately meant, and that was becoming like Him. I firmly believe that God is my Father and that I'm His Son, and that means I'm heir to Him. And if that means I'm heir to a God, what is impossible? Nothing. Actually, how I came up with the name Limitless Society. Every single one of us are limitless because we are heir to a God. And so I launched my coaching, mentoring, whatever you want to call it, and I realized that my only passion left in life was to help other people. And as I help other people, I help myself. I find purpose, I find peace and power and strength and all those things that a lot of people look for in riches. That's why so many people chase riches, right? And that true purpose and power doesn't come from riches. It doesn't. It comes from you finding out that there's things that you can do in your life that can affect and impact other people. And that's when I went hard as shit, man. And so now today, that's kind of what I do. I still own quite a few companies. I own 6 companies. But my purpose of what I do now is I help people become the greatest version of themselves, the greatest father, the greatest husband, the greatest leader, the greatest business owner, the greatest ultimate version of themselves. And just by a byproduct, they get what most people want, which is success of riches, right? The better you become, the more money you make. That's just what it is. So I
Yeah.
started doing that, man, and now I'm on this dead set target. I'm going to do this until the day that I die because it has changed me. I've affected thousands and thousands of people, and it's just been something I've fallen in love with.
That's the whole podcast right there. I think we're good. 5 minutes. That was that was awesome. Yeah, I think I have conversations all the time because when people say, "Oh, the spiritual stuff," they throw religion in and they can argue. And it's not about just the
For
religion, right? It's
sure,
about the
for
people
sure.
and the connection to God, right? Whatever you believe. And when I say what you just said is we're children, we're children of God. So what is our highest potential to be like God? And
No,
that's not saying we are the God, right? It's not, and people
absolutely.
misunderstand this. I love that you said that. It's not saying that we're God. It's become, we look up at God and say, hey, we can do, even in the Bible, Jesus said, do what you can do what I did plus more, because the person before us paves the path to clear the way so we can walk that path as well. And then we have to pioneer that path as well, right? So it's a touchy subject with
Yeah.
people that are very religious. They say, oh, I can never be like Jesus. I can never be like God. It's like crazy. I'm like, well, if you're like,
Well,
what's the
you
other
know what's
option,
funny?
right?
I
Stay
had a lot
stuck,
of those
stay
conversations
suffering.
with very religious people. I actually memorized the Bible when I was 21. I memorized it word for word, and I did it for the wrong reason. I did it because I wanted to argue with people, right? I wanted to be like, I want to know everything, and every religion that comes my way, I want to argue with them. But like there is so many scriptures like this one, be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father in heaven aren't perfect. He's literally saying You have to become like me. That's the purpose of this life. That's the whole thing. That's what I've set up. All these experiences, all these things in life is to be as I am. And again, there are a lot of people that I don't, it's blasphemy to say I can become God. You can't become God, but you are his child. To become like him, to do what he does, to create like him, to have what he has, to feel as he feels. That's the purpose of life. Man's purpose is to become something greater. And the best part is we already have the standard, a perfect father in heaven to become like.
Yeah, right.
Mhm.
It takes all the guesswork out of it, and that's what people. When people are in chaos and confusion, it's because you don't have success. Starts once you have that clear plan and actually consistently follow that plan, right? Before, and that's what we're sort of when we're searching around in the dark. We're it's the light in the dark, right? We're in the dark. We're kind of like bumping into stuff and like, okay, I think this might be it. I think this might be it, right? When as soon as the light comes in, that's like, oh, that's where it is, and that's when life starts taking off, right? As soon as you connect with that, and yeah, what you said, it's like we're here to be creators. It's like look at we're the microcosm, the macrocosm. It's like, what does God do? God creates, right? God is constantly growing, expanding through eternity, not just this finite physical existence, right? But even while we're here too, we're going to max out our lives and constantly grow and expand because, for me personally, probably the same thing with you. I hate just being stagnant and stuck. I'm like, it just, that's when you're talking
Yeah.
about anxiety, depression, stuff like that. Is it's knowing you have a greater potential and not stepping up to it. And I think that's really where people get stuck. I was just talking about this on a podcast like 2 hours ago. It is, ultimately people are scared of themselves, right? Because it's going to shine a light and show like, hey, your potential is all the way up here. Not to say they have to go from here to here in like a year or beyond, right? But that's what it's reflecting back on them. I say, oh, I know I'm more capable. I know what need to do because I always say like God, energy, universe, whatever you want to say, it's always coming in. It's always cutting in. We're the ones that are disconnecting ourselves, cutting ourselves off, choosing to kind of like turn away. But like, it's not God. When people get in these dark phases of life, God's not the one cutting you
A
off.
hundred
You are
percent,
cutting
dude. I have
yourself
that
off.
conversation a lot with people
You
when they
know?
talk about the concept of heaven and hell. It's not God keeping us from heaven. It's us making our own decisions that keep us out. And it completely is dictated by ourselves. Like God's not going to be up there going, "Hey, you can't be here." He's going to ask you, "Do you feel right here?" And that's the whole purpose of all of this. I would say if you whittled all spirituality and religion and God, everything down to one thing, it's based around progression. True progression. That's true spirituality. We understand that where we are is not where we are meant to be. And we are supposed to use this time, even through all the eternities, to continue to progress. And how freaking beautiful is it that we have the opportunity to have an example of what it is that we one day could be. And it's funny, man, we do it on a micro scale. You talk about, well, we're supposed to create like God, and people say, well, only God's the creator. Dude, everything in your life you created. What you wear, the house you live in, the car you drive,
Yeah.
the things you do, the way you make money, the father that you are, it's all a creation of you. You're the sum total of your thoughts, and your thoughts created your sum total. That's the reality. We are creators. That's what we are. And we're heir to the greatest creator to find out how to become the greatest creator who continually creates.
Yeah, I like continuously, right? I like what you said because some people you're talking about the afterlife and death. It's some people think it's lights out, and some people think it's heaven, and some people, in the spiritual teachings, there's higher and higher dimensions to continuously grow and progress
Absolutely.
after your past here, right? So it's like which means what you do now, what you learn now matters. There is no kind of I cross over and I don't have to grow
Absolutely.
anymore. You still have to grow, right? But you're going to have even more room to grow. The thing about this physical experience is it gives us a container to actually experience those things. If we're just pure energy kind of floating around, we need structure, right? That's why business is a structure. Everything that has purpose has a structure to it. And that's why we said, hey, let's come here, let's learn how to create. So when things become less and less dense, we still know those principles and we've learned all the virtues that we need. So we continuously do that, right? And
And you know what's funny, dude, is people
yeah, right.
think that whatever we do here may not matter there, but what they don't realize is when you talk about energy, dude, we were never like this life wasn't the beginning. There was something before this, and what we did before
Right.
this ultimately prepared us for this. You know how we know that? Because every person on this planet is at a different place, and we all started at a different place because of what we did previously. So funny. I see people, especially young people, who you can see are spiritual giants, right? And they're young in their experience here on earth. Well, what did they do to become the giant that they are? And where was it? It was before this life. And it's the same thing. What we do on this life will ultimately give us the advantage in the next. How well I prepare now and do what I need to do will ultimately put me in the place I need to be in the next. And it will always be continual progression. So if it is, I would work as hard as I possibly can in every phase of eternity to get to where I want to be.
Yeah, exactly, right? It's, we have, like you're saying, it's like somebody saying, "Oh, you're an old soul," right? Somebody who's younger and wise. And what I teach in my class is emanations, right? So before we incarnate here, we sort of, people talk about spirit guides and stuff. We have these experiences. We're kind of peeking into physicality to say like, hey, how do you do this? How do you do that? And that's why a lot of people can get confused with that. We're talking about reincarnation and stuff. And if you look at reincarnation, it was reincarnation. It's really bizarre to think about that because it's anti-progression. And it's like, hey, we're going to live this life. We're going to live this life, and then we die, and then we go back to the start, and we keep, it's
Yeah.
like playing the same video game,
Yeah.
like the same level over and over and over. And I'm like,
Doesn't make sense.
that's insane. And I see people, they're like, no, it doesn't make sense. When you actually look at this stuff rationally, it's like, yeah, like why would it be that way? Yeah, it's like, so it all starts really with progression, right? It starts with God. It starts with know thyself, right? There's that popular term. And what is know thyself? It's like know God, know yourself, have that relationship and that connection with God.
Yeah.
And that's your power source, right? When people are stuck, I say it all the time. If you walk down the street and you see people with like their head down and kind of their energy is a little dull, they're very disconnected. Unfortunately, that's how most people are. And as soon as you connect back into that power source, that's when things actually start happening for you. Not There can be sort of the illusion of success where maybe you get yourself stuck in a bad situation. Maybe you're doing something out of integrity or you're making money and the kind of material success, right? Without integrity behind it. But true success starts when you reconnect yourself back with God, and that lays out the path in the step-by-step process to expand your consciousness and awareness and energy and capacity to create. I was, the guy we were talking about before I was explaining what I do, we kind of got into this back and forth about, and I want to get your input about this. We got in this back and forth about power. And I said, well, everybody has the same potential, but they don't have the same power. And to clarify that is the person, somebody who is, say homeless compared to somebody who CEO of a top company, right? They still have a path to God and they still have that that way to go. But the difference between them is the person who took responsibility who gains more power because he's more responsible for that person. The guy with nothing that's kind of stuck, he doesn't have any power because he has no responsibility. He's not taking those actions, right? So it's like, what is the, you could probably say it better than me, but is God takes
Yeah,
care of
no,
those who take care of
exactly. I mean,
themselves.
I'm a very adamant believer in we must do all that we are supposed to do to get anything out of this life that we want. And of course, when we fall short, there is a way provided for us, but it doesn't take away personal responsibility, true ownership, right? At the end of the day, life wouldn't be fair any other way. All of us would be set on the same path. All of us would have the same exact decisions. We would take personal responsibility completely out of it. And that's not the way that life works. You ultimately are in charge of your progression. You're in charge of your power. And are we all able to have it? Yes. But do we all get it? No. Because it is predicated on our own ability to take our own responsibility to do it. And that is through our action, our belief, all of those things. Again, why I'm so adamant about personal development is when you realize that you are the author of your life, you are the dictator of what you do. The way has been provided, but you must do it. And those who do it harder than others see greater success. And that's just the way that life is. And it's the way that it's been set up. And it's always going to be that way. Potential? Yes. But reality is all based on your own ability to take ownership and move forward into that progression.
We have, it's a system of merit, right? It's all earned inequality, right? The person who earns it
Absolutely.
gets the opportunity. And what you said about the way, right? It's when you struggle, and this is, I did this. I'm sure you did this. I'm sure many young guys and many people have done this. We try to fight for our way. Say, I'm going to do it. I figured all this out. It's kind of like the people who self-made, like say, there's nobody self-made, but everybody who says they're self-made, I did it by myself, and they want some type of pat on the back, right? There is no your way. There is God's way, and that's the easy it might be not that it's easy. It might be extremely hard, but that's the clearest path. You're right. So I think when we get stuck in our ego and say, "Oh, I got to figure this out," and it's like no, just let go of your way, right? I didn't learn how to do. I can't say, even if somebody wrote a book that helped me out, right? That person, even if I know them personally or not, they were still a piece on my path that
Yeah.
advanced me
which
forward,
which
right?
is ultimately complete
So it's
ownership. And what you're really talking about is when you learn what is in your control and what is not in your control, and you can identify that, you then become a savage in that which you can control. And that's all you can really do in this life. And the greatest stoic, the greatest man, the
yeah.
greatest woman is the one who has identified very clearly in their life, I have no control over that. I have no stress over that. I have control over this, and this is where I put all of my time and my energy of controlling that which I have control over, which, by the way, is not a lot. It's not a lot. But when you realize that, then you can actually go to work to accomplish anything you want to accomplish, realizing, okay, these are in my control, these are not. I will relinquish all of my thoughts, my preconceived notions of what is out of my control, let go completely, leave that up to God, and I will focus on that which I have complete control over, and that's all I can do.
Were you preaching this during the political races when people want to say,
Oh
"Oh, the
yeah,
government
dude,
this and that,
I don't
whatever"?
get
It's like,
into
well,
that.
you
I'm
know,
so tired of hearing people so stressed
no,
out
no, no,
about, well, this president and this and that. Listen, man, at the end of the day, I don't
doesn't
care
matter.
who's in the presidency. I'm still going to be successful. I'm still going to have peace. I'm still going to provide for my family. Listen, this whole world could be chaos. Doesn't matter. I'm still going to succeed.
Yeah, exactly. People will hope because it makes it easier for them to say, "Oh, it was them." They wish there was somebody to point a finger at, and the hardest person to point a
Absolutely.
finger at is yourself, right? And it's not, I will kind of touch into. I don't really like digging into the cesspool of social media and news. People, a popular thing is, oh, the Matrix and the government, they're trying to suppress us and this and that, whatever. It's none of that. It's just they're trying to put something externally and saying, oh, well, these people in power are trying to control us. It's like, well, they might be misguided. That might be true, right? But it's like what at the heart of people are actually good, right? Every kind of thing or like mishap that happens is the person doing it thinks there's a good
Yeah.
intention behind it, right? Whether that's right or wrong. So it's like, what is the actual? If you want to solve problems of the world, it's like solve the people problem, solve the individual empowerment problem, because if everyone's empowered and taking responsibility and we have more clarity and connection, then all these issues and wars and all this stuff, they get solved like that,
100%.
right? But that's the last thing. It's like what is the book, the guy goes
I'm
searching for
not
gold.
sure.
It's the Alchemist, right? The guy goes searching for gold in his big journey and stuff, and he comes back where he started and realizes the gold was there the entire time. It's like this is the confusion of people. It's where we're searching, we're searching, we're searching. It's like, oh, it's right
Yeah.
here the
And a
entire
lot of
time,
that goes back to just
right?
the simple
So
methodology of victim mentality. It's easier for me to say that the outside circumstances are the reason I am what I am internally, rather than, like you said, looking in the mirror and saying, hey, you're the problem and you're also the solution. And there is nothing outside that can change you internally. And as soon as you take full responsibility of that, it doesn't matter what happens around you. The whole world could be against me. I will still succeed because I know what I must do.
yeah, and I mean, you have a whole team on your back too, right? When you're spiritually connected, it's like it's not just you, right? If you ever feel alone here, you might feel alone here in the physical world, right? But you have an entire army and team behind your back helping you, right, to support your resilience while you're here. And that's why it's like, everything in life is relationships, right? Anything, if we want the best out of this physical life, it's have better, deep relationships that you can serve and you can offer value. Same thing with the spiritual realms as well. It's like as above, so below. We look at God and the relationships there, and it's like we can actually take those relationships and apply it here. Where people feel stuck is they're looking for physical solutions of spiritual problems, and the only all this internal stuff are your thoughts, feelings, emotions, all the kind of junk that's keeping us stuck. Those are all spiritual problems. They're all energetic, right? So why are we looking at antidepressants and other vices and other things to to heal that stuff? It's like the only thing that can heal that is a higher energy that comes in and
100%. One of
purifies
my
that stuff.
favorite quotes from actually a leader in my church, he said it in the 70s. He said, if your eyes could be opened to see the multitude of warriors, of angels that are coming to your defense and to your help, you would ultimately change your outlook on the life that you have, realizing that you have so much more behind your back than you realize. And again, the more you know and the more you realize those who are for you, the easier it is to get the task done at hand. And a lot of people, especially when they feel stuck, they feel alone, they don't realize their eyes haven't been open to what has been sent their way to help, to support, to help them succeed, to protect, all of those things. And again, that's a very powerful message for those who aren't spiritual. The closer you get to God, the more spiritual you become, the more your eyes become open to the other side, and what is ultimately there to help you is so much more than you realize.
Yeah, and I teach, like in my class, I teach about the spiritual senses, and it's kind of like our, five physical senses, but an extension of those, right? So, there are people that can see different energies and different beings and stuff like that, maybe angelic beings, but it's like anything else. It's a muscle. It's not one of those things. It's like once you make the connection, you have to make an effort every single day, just like anything else. It's not just you can't just tune into something and tune out and expect it to always be there. You have to be constantly tuned into that thing. You have to constantly, put in the work to build, as we build relationships with people here, we have to continuously invest and build relationships in the divine, whether that's prayer, meditation, rituals, going to church, whatever
Yeah.
that is for that person. It's a constant practice. It's like if you work out, I've been working out for 15 years now. If I take 2 months off, my body's going to start atrophying, right? Now, it's going to bounce back. There's that muscle memory. It's going to bounce back quick. But yeah, it makes, I go to the gym 5 days a week, right? To continuously grow and progress. Just like, the spiritual path, I check in morning and night throughout the day to
Yeah.
grow and progress. Right. And a lot of people say, oh, I'm just going to, just going on Sunday, if somebody goes to church, just going on Sunday is not enough. You have to take that into your day-to-day life. You have to take that into your business. You have to take it into your family. You have to take it into, people you're interacting with in the gas station, the guy that's, yelling at you, pissing you off, whatever. You have to take God into all those situations. And what I like to say, it's like you have to make every situation sacred. If you take it at face value and just the mundane, then you're going to get a pretty black and white, boring life. You're kind of like, okay, I got the money, I got the cars, I got the house, I got, a few pleasures and fun. You're like, this
Yeah.
sucks, you know. But there's always a deeper, deeper, deeper experience there if you're able to
100%.
tune into
I
that.
agree with you. It's all repetition based. The more you do it, the better you become at it. I always have those people that I like to
Yeah.
lift heavy at the gym, and I get often the question, how long did it take you to squat that? How long did it take for you to press that weight? And it's like, a lot of people think they're going to get under that bar for the first time and do it. And it's the same thing spiritually. People want answers from God and they put in very, very minimal effort. They want answers spiritually and they put very, very minimal effort in. And what they don't realize that it's time under tension. And the more I do it, the better I get at it. And the more answers that I get to where I want to go. And it's the same thing as the gym as it is spiritually. It's time under tension and repetition over and over and over again.
I said that the other, maybe 2 weeks ago on an Instagram story because I get a lot of clarity while I'm working out. If you probably do as well. And I think I was doing like a close grip bench or whatever. And I'm like, you know what builds quality muscle? It's the mind muscle connection, but it's the time under tension, right? So it's like the same thing with the spiritual stuff. It's the connection. You have to have that connection. Then you have to be the person who is able to take on that pressure and that pain or whatever it is, that's going to be the most mature one. That's going to be the stronger one. And it's not necessarily, I say all the time, I know 80-year-old women that are like skin and bones, but they're stronger than, like an IFBB pro bodybuilder, right? It's not just like physical muscle. It's ultimately like the spiritual muscle, the resilience, and that carries into everything else, right? So, somebody like you got both, lucky to have both of them, right? You got the big muscle and you got the
Yep.
spiritual muscles that you can flex. Where did the nickname the
Man,
muscle
funny
come
enough.
from?
So a lot of people see my stuff and they're like, who calls themselves the muscle? I didn't come up with that nickname. So I had a TV show. I had a TV
I'm
show
sure.
for about 10 years. We had a really popular reality show on Discovery Channel called Diesel Brothers. And they wanted us when we started the show to have nicknames. And I was like, I don't want a nickname. I think that's stupid. Anyways, while we were in the middle of filming one of our first episodes, my buddy, who his nickname is Diesel Dave, he came up with my nickname, The Muscle. And then everybody started calling me that. And that's kind of how it stuck. And I can't get rid of it.
I mean, it fits. So it makes sense. I mean, we haven't met in person. But I'm like, okay, yeah, it makes sense. Oh yeah, Diesel Dave.
Yeah.
I know he's a big YouTuber. Okay, I can see the
Yeah.
connection, the helicopters, all that stuff. Maybe, yeah, maybe one day
Yeah. Well,
I
hey,
get a good
man, that's the
helicopter, I
plan. I'll
guess.
tell you, you'll never feel
You know,
closer to God than when you're in a helicopter. It's great.
I've jumped out of a ton of
Yeah,
planes. I
it's
felt pretty
dude,
close to
helicopters are
God
just
then.
different. I've
So
spent a lot of time in
that's
planes, spent
fun.
a lot of time doing a lot of stuff, but helicopters is very, very different. The way that you can control and maneuver and pick your altitude, it's a beautiful thing. I actually took someone up yesterday. It took me about a year to convince her to get in the helicopter. And I took her up yesterday for the first time, scared out of her mind. And no joke, within 20 seconds of us taking off, I could see she started to tear up a little bit. And I said, "How are you doing?" And she said, "This is the most spiritual thing I've ever done in my life."
Yeah, I think it's I've never been in a helicopter, but I think I could see where same thing as like skydiving. It's a It's control and lack
Yes,
of control in both ways. I think you're getting
exactly.
both of those poles at the same exact. Yeah, it's like when you have power and you have no power, it's like that's kind of like where bliss is. I know Will Smith actually, before I went skydiving, I had to kind of psych myself up for it. And he has to make a short story, he has a thing of like talking about the excitement and the fear before you go skydiving. He's like, once you jump out and cross that kind of fear, that your personal abyss, he's like, it's just bliss. And it's like such a beautiful experience, right? But it's like, because you can look at like, oh, it's extremely scary and dangerous, but at the same time it's like the lack of, maybe just the way of kind of opening yourself up to those greater potentials or experiences. Like
Absolutely.
that's where the bliss is, right? So things that, it's that can be looked at as like a comfort zone too. It's like the comfort zone is what's keeping us stuck. It's that, there's that sort of abyss that surrounds the comfort zone, that fear. But it's like once we have faith and we take that leap on the other side,
Yep.
it's just more
100%.
bliss, right? That's kind of like the catch 22. It's like you would think it would be the thing that you're projecting it to be, but like when you actually just fly in a helicopter out of a plane, you're like,
It's
oh, this
great.
is
That's why
amazing,
I
this is
do it. I,
beautiful,
I
right?
it's funny enough. I
And it's
spend a
just
lot of
that
time flying
yeah,
just
hopeful.
randomly. Like people ask, why do I have a helicopter? I'm like, I have no other purpose than one thing. When I'm up there, it really is when I'm closest to God, and it helps me to get my mind clear and be very, very present. It's the most in my life that I'm present in that moment.
Yeah.
And you have to be to fly a helicopter. It's not just push a few buttons. It's a lot of work to get a helicopter to fly. And it forces you to be present. And in that present moment, essentially everything that we've talked about is you have complete control over how well you prep that thing, whether you fill it with fuel, how well you prep it, flying it. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of things out of your control. That helicopter could go down at any moment. And that's where you find that bliss, where you're completely prepared in the things you have control and you have completely let go of the things you don't have control over. And that's where that bliss comes from, of just that moment of everything I had to do, I did, and everything I don't have any control over, I let go completely.
Yeah, I think, well, you said too, I think another thing, when you have like a pressure or responsibility, I think people do well under pressure because it forces them it just pulls them out of their victimhood. That's the easiest way to pull somebody out of their victimhood. When shit actually hits the fan, you really have to focus. That's when all the excuses, all the emotions, all the junk, all the polluted crap, that just goes right out the window, right? And I think that's what it's sort of an issue today, is because people don't actually have that, right? So you need to put yourself in those situations where you can have just sort of that like singular mind, the clear mind. It's just, what do I actually need to do? The rest of it's just
Yep.
all
100%. And
whatever,
that's,
you
again,
know?
that's why I like flying so much. Yeah.
Yeah, you're inspiring me to go fly now.
I haven't.
Do you ever jump
I've
out of a
always
plane?
been too big to do it.
Oh, what is it? I think over 250 or
The
260.
biggest one
You
I've
can
ever
still
heard
do
of
it.
is
There's just
275, but I've been between 290 and 310 my whole life. So I've never been able to do it.
what is it? I know. So I don't know if you've heard this. So I'm 210 right now. Under 210 is what's victim weight. What is uh, what is the
It's a
300 range?
different caliber, man. That's the
That's a different
caliber.
realm for
Like,
me.
it's funny. People see me all the time, and I always tell them, like, the person you see in front of you, I created. I wanted to be the only one in the room that cannot be manhandled. There's not a person at any point when I speak in front of 2,000 people, there's not a person in that stadium that can manhandle me. At 300 pounds, it's just not going to happen. Now, are there bigger people? Yes. But even bigger people are not going to be able to manhandle me. It's not going to happen. And so for me, I've always wanted to be bigger because I like the presence that it carries. I like the confidence that it carries. It's just how I've always been. It's a powerful
Yeah,
thing to say, hey, man, I weigh 100 pounds more than almost everybody else in the room.
Yeah, exactly. But that's a good point though, because it's like if somebody looks at you and they're like, "Oh, there's this big, mean-looking, muscular guy," right? But from my experience, the biggest guys, the biggest, strongest guys have been the
Always.
softest, nicest guys. It's funny how that works. The small guys, I am 5'9". I'm kind of, on the shorter side, definitely. Weight-wise, mid the bigger, I guess, for the average person. But it's always the smaller guys that are like the meanest guys. The bigger guys, I don't even know if I can name one big guy that I know that's not like the nicest, most like generous,
It kind of goes
helpful,
along
loving
with that
guy.
saying that you should be a warrior in a garden, because bigger guys, there's not a
Hmm.
lot they have to prove. I don't need to prove my strength. I don't need to step into a room and be powerful. I don't need to show you I'm a dick. I don't need to try to be intimidating. I'm already all of those things, and I'm already prepared to be those things. So usually those guys like myself, we
Yeah.
are softer because I haven't lived my life having to prove, having to push, having to be something that I'm not. I'm just a presence in and of itself.
That's a good point. There's two things to say. Somebody asked me the other day, they said, "Oh, well, how do you handle the stuff you do?" And I'm like, "Well, I believe in myself. I'm confident in myself, right? So I know I can protect myself. I know I am that thing that I say I am, right? And so like you said, if you're looking at power and peace, and actually let's tie this into God. What is God? If you look at God, most powerful force in the universe, right? But also the most loving, unconditionally loving force as well, right? So you can't really be, if you want to be overall powerful,
No.
you can't have one without the other, right? Because somebody who is, I call this kind of distorted masculine, who's just like head down, kind of a dick, and just like looks big, tough, whatever. That guy will break
Yeah.
so quickly. It's insane. But then on the other side of that, if you have the guy that's just peaceful and way too passive and a pushover, no boundaries and no anything, then he's just going to
Yeah.
blow over just as easy, right? So it's having that, my vision of God is having those forces balanced out, the strength and the peace, and weaving those, for
That's one
whatever
of
the
the things I
situation
love
calls
about
for.
Jordan B. Peterson. He talks about becoming a monster. Everybody should become a monster, and then they should learn to harness it. And the more you do in your preparation to become that monster, the more confident you are in that monster, the more you get the opportunity to harness it and be humble and kind and soft, because I'm not here to prove anything. You hear a lot like rich people don't brag about being rich. They don't, because they know that they already are. Poor people usually spend the majority of their life trying to convince everybody that they're rich. It's the same idea. And that's again, when you put it back to God, like God is the most powerful. He doesn't have to act like it. He doesn't have to show it. He doesn't have to be crazy. He doesn't have to be mean, because we know how powerful he is. And that's one of the things I think, again, that I teach a lot is through personal development. The more powerful, the more monster you become, the more confident you become, and the softer and sweeter and more humble you can be, because you don't have to be that person, because you already know that you are.
Yeah. Did you ever, I mean, I'm sure you've seen the movie The Matrix, right? He says the line when they're at the dojo, it's my favorite movie, but he says, don't try to, he said, don't try to hit me. Right. So it's like, don't try to be the thing, because trying to be the thing, we sort of kind of, we trip ourselves up in the mind, right? Where we try to, it's
Yes,
like fake it till you make it. It doesn't work. But being the authentic version of the thing, it's like, you just are the thing. It's like, if you look at you, you're just a nice guy. You just are what you are. Right. And there's so much
100%.
power behind that. So, I know I want to respect your time. We have
Yeah.
about 10 minutes left. Cool. So, what is, the next step? I work personally with a lot of guys who are, say, 25 to 35. Then I have a group of guys who are about 50 all the way up to 78 years old. But once a guy maxes out his, just the physical world, right? He's got his money in order. He's got a few things in order. And he says, he's like, oh, I'm stuck or something, right? What is that
So,
next step
yeah, so I,
for
I
for a man?
teach 5 pillars that I kind of really focus on. And the 5 pillars are what it takes to become the greatest version of yourself. And it is physical health, mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, and then financial health. And the truth is that no matter how far you get in any one of them, you still have more room to grow. But somebody who is in their full authentic self, who is in the greatest version or towards the greatest version of themselves, is not lacking in any one of those pillars. And the problem is that a lot of people think if they attack one pillar and they become really good in one pillar, that it will just ultimately be the purpose of their life. And that's why you see so many people who are rich and miserable, who are in really good shape and who have nothing else. people who are really good mentally, but they don't have any money, right? You have to look at life as a whole, and all of those pillars point us to the greatest version of ourselves. We're in the greatest shape ever. Our mind is fortified through mentally and emotionally. We're able to dictate and regulate ourselves the way that we want. We are close with our God. We are where we need to be spiritually. And then, of course, as a byproduct of all four of those pillars, we just become financially successful. When I identify with people, no matter where they're at in their life, I ask them to take inventory of all five of those pillars and tell me where they lack. I don't care where you think you're good. Where do you lack? And maybe you're an 8 in physical health. But what you don't realize is that if you focus on your mental health, your physical health will get better. If you focus on your physical health, your financial health will get better. If you focus on your spiritual health, your fitness and your money gets better. That's why you must look at all five of those, identify where you're your weakest, and understand as you bring all of them up, all of them come up. And again, when you find someone who does that, that's a very powerful individual.
It's top down as well too, and I see a lot of people have it backwards. They have their spiritual
Yes.
health last, their mental health in the middle, and their physical health first, right? And yeah, I mean, if you don't have your
You can't
physical
do
health, you
anything.
really can't do it. If you don't have your physical health, you can't do anything. You can't focus on the stuff. But the physical realms fulfill you mentally, which fulfills you physically, right? But people are there. It's I always like to say, if you want to be
Yeah.
successful, do everything
And
backwards
that's what
than
I
a regular
focus on.
person. So it's like
That's my
flip that
biggest
pyramid
focus
upside
is
down.
I sit down with people and do
But
that all the
what
time.
I
People who
was
want to make more money, I'll ask them how their marriage is. I'll ask them how they are with God. I'll ask them how their mind is. And they're
yeah,
like, dude, I didn't come to you for that. I came to you because I want to make more money. And I'm like, yeah, but you've had it reversed your entire life.
that's
You
what it
think that it's
is.
finances. It's not.
Yeah, that's what it is. The systems. Oh, it's not. No, because I always use the example. There's the book like Think and Grow Rich. There's a million business books. So if everybody's read like say the top 3 to 5 books, why isn't everybody who read those books a millionaire? Because it's more than the system is 10% of the thing. The
And the work.
90% is the individual. But as far in the work and actually taking the action, yeah, we have a lot of hyper emotional
Yeah,
people that just don't want to take the action anymore and do the repetitions, right? And but the thing is, like when guys come to me, it's like, oh, what's the next level? It's like the next level, whether you're getting married or having kids or not, it's responsibility, right? And if you look up to, like we're saying, if you're learning from God, what is God? God is divine union, and God is a father. So if we are the microcosm of that, it's like, hey, it might be a good idea to find a good woman and have kids and share that and lead your
absolutely.
kids as well too, right? And there's that in our personal lives, there's our wife and kids, but then we as guides, mentors, and leaders, we become sort of like a spiritual father figure for the people we're helping as well too. Right. So it's taking care of your family and expanding your family, but also growing, expanding your relationships, your friends, the people you're working with too. It's that next level is level 1 to level 2, more responsibility, level 3, responsibility. And then beyond that, this is a different time to discuss. But there's more spiritual responsibilities as well that become less about the physical, more about the
Absolutely.
higher realms. But that's a whole different rabbit hole. But yeah, when for me when my daughter was born, that was the catalyst. It was my back against the wall. It was like I can either just like end this or get better, right? But it's an initiation into a new life, a new the way you perceive life just changes, right? The single guy's just worried about himself, just chasing women, making money. He can't see that yet. He's blind to that until he just steps into that, and that's whether it happens intentionally or not, that is sort of something you have to look at yourself and be like, hey, is this what I'm ready for?
A hundred
Right.
percent. And it's funny. I've realized these things as of late, and I'm a coach, a mentor for success across the board. But I've really realized that how you do one thing is how you do everything. And if you don't focus on everything spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, and financially, it will bleed into everything else. And because of that, one of my first questions I ask people who ask me to mentor them is I ask them, how's your marriage? Because again, how you do everything in your marriage is how you do everything in your business. How you communicate in your marriage is how you communicate in your business. How you lead in your marriage is how you do those things. And because of that, I've really began to lean a lot of my coaching into building marriages. And even so, like I do marriage masterminds. I'm doing a marriage mastermind next month in Cabo, and I'm bringing, tons of couples down, and we're going to focus on, I know you want to be successful here, here, and here, but realize that the platform for you to do it is right here in this marriage. And the more you get better here, the better everything else
Yeah, it's the
is.
marriage. Yeah, we could talk about marriage itself for 3 hours because, like I said, I'm not married, but as a spiritual guy, that we learn those aspects and everything. And people don't understand what marriage actually is and the sacredness behind it and the commitment they make. And I see that's why when you make a commitment, it's like being promoted in a job. When you're saying, "Hey, I'm going to step into this higher level and a role and responsibility," you're going to have more pressure to fulfill that role and to fulfill that commitment that you made. And the people who just get married just because, the reason that falls apart within the first 2 years is because there's more pressure that they're not seeing like spiritually because they made a commitment. Whether they knew what the commitment was or not, they've still made the commitment. And it's like, okay, now you have to step up. That union, the union itself creates God.
Yeah.
As man and woman together create the Trinity, God, right? So that is going to hold you to your highest potential. And people that don't get that, and even all relationships in a way create God. Like if you and I were in business together, there would be some energetic flow to create the business. The thing we're creating is
Yeah.
a divine aspect, right? And that's another thing. It's like beyond marriage, the highest initiation we can receive while we're here is to be a parent, to have children, because what else is going to progress the world rather than expanding
Yeah.
and having children, right? And it's our responsibility to take something, our children, that we have the responsibility. We have to guide them as clear as we can, which puts the responsibility back on us to
Yeah.
figure out our own shit, like now, not later, like
100%.
now,
And again,
right?
dude, the more people realize
But
that,
yeah,
the more powerful they'll become.
yeah, and I think we only got a couple minutes. What I see guys all the time like, oh no, I can't commit to a woman, I can't do this, I can't. And it's like what you said. Well, how you do one thing is how you do everything. If you can't commit in a relationship, those guys don't have success. Oh, what was I saying with that?
I'll tell you that while you're thinking
The
about that, it all
commitment.
comes down to you're good. It all
Sorry,
comes
it's
down
something
to
else.
if I can't commit to a woman, I can't commit to myself and I can't commit to anything, you know? And again,
Oh, I noticed that they have a fear of limitation. The
yeah,
limitation creates the freedom. So it's like when you are in, maybe your fear is the
which
wrong
is
woman,
valid.
which is totally fine, right? A
Yeah.
woman's going to make or break your life. Valid, right? So it's like take your time, be discerning, pick the right one, right? Does, a good indicator, there's a million other ones, but like does she make your life easier? Right? Not easy as like any relationship's going to be hard, but like easy overall. Are you guys growing, progressing the way you want to? And are you guys able to support each other and give more than you're taking? Yeah, this can be, maybe I'll
Yeah,
go to the
come out to the
Cabo
Cabo. Hey, funny
retreat. That
enough,
can
I
be
actually have a
hours.
few people who are single who are coming to the Cabo because they know how important marriage is and they need to learn the shit they need to learn to prepare for the marriage they want.
But it plays into everything else. When in the mystery school that I'm a guide in, we have our hermetic classes. The hermetic classes are very kind of bare bones principles and like how does it apply in every area. And yeah, you can still learn if you're going to a marriage retreat. You can still take that and be like, okay, how is that communication and partnership going to play into my business? Maybe I want to be a parent one day. Maybe it's not about. It's like the same thing. How you do one thing is how you do everything. It's funny you say that. I was laughing because the podcast just 2 hours ago, that's something we say in the Hermetic lineage all the time. And he said, yeah, I was at this, he's a chiropractor. He's like, I was at this chiropractor retreat, whatever. While everybody's in the class, the guy has his associates go out and check people's cars and see if their cars are messy or not. Right. And I said all the time, like, if you have a messy house,
Yep.
messy car, it's probably a messy mind. Right. It's kind of the external looking the internal. So yeah,
It's a
that's
very good indicator, dude. Very good
good thing.
indicator. But again,
So
it goes back to that principle. How you
yeah.
do one thing is how you do everything.
Cool. All right. Well, I want to respect your time. I wish we have another 3 hours to talk,
My
but
man, it was an
maybe in
honor
the
to talk to
future.
you.
But yeah, I appreciate we.
Yeah,
No, same thing. Thank you. Appreciate it. I was
absolutely,
looking
man.
forward to this one a lot. Awesome. All right.